The fluorescent lights of Vertex Technology's 32nd floor burned with the cold intensity of a surgical theater, but what unfolded beneath them was more autopsy than operation. System error. Critical failure. All operations suspended. The words blazed across every monitor in the open-plan office, a sea of crimson warnings that transformed 200 computer screens into accusatory eyes. The low hum of servers that had been the office's constant heartbeat for 15 years suddenly flatlined into silence, replaced by a cacophony of alarm sounds that created a symphony of disaster. CO Harrison Mercer stood frozen at the front of the glass-walled conference room, his slate-gray Armani suit suddenly feeling 3 sizes too tight. Sweat beaded at his temples despite the aggressive air conditioning. Behind him, projected onto a 12-foot screen, were the pixelated faces of 17 venture capital investors, men and women who had collectively invested $340 million into Vertex's revolutionary cloud-based financial platform. They were supposed to be watching a flawless product launch. Instead, they were witnessing a public execution. Harrison. The voice crackled through the conference speaker, tinny and impatient. It belonged to Margaret Chen, lead partner at Sequoia Ventures, a woman whose single disapproving glance could evaporate billion-dollar valuations. What exactly are we looking at here? Harrison's mouth opened. His mind raced through corporate platitudes and damage control scripts, but his tongue felt like sandpaper. Around him, the office had descended into controlled pandemonium. "I need everyone on this now," bellowed Marcus Webb, Chief Technology Officer, a wiry man in his late 30s whose usually immaculate appearance had deteriorated in seconds. His tie hung askew, his glasses sliding down his sweat-slicked nose as he sprinted between workstations. "Jenkins, what's the status on the backup servers?" "Unresponsive," came the panicked reply from a young programmer whose face had gone the color of old milk. "The backup protocol isn't engaging. It's like the entire system is locked." Sarah Chen, no relation to the investor, led the IT security team with the intensity of a general commanding troops in a losing battle. She hammered commands into her keyboard with such force that Harrison worried she might break through the keys. "The firewall is intact. This isn't a breach. Jesus, it's like the system is fighting itself." Papers flew as junior analysts scrambled between cubicles. Phone lines lit up like a Christmas tree as clients from New York to Singapore began calling, demanding to know why their accounts were inaccessible. In the break room, someone dropped a coffee mug. The crash of ceramics seemed to punctuate the company's shattering credibility. Harrison turned back to the screen of investor faces. Margaret Chen's expression had moved beyond impatience into the cold calculus of financial triage. He could practically see her writing off Vertex in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison began, his voice catching like a car engine failing to turn over. "We're experiencing a temporary technical difficulty?" The voice that cut him off belonged to Robert Hutchinson, a silver-haired veteran of Silicon Valley who'd made and lost 3 fortunes. "Harrison, your entire platform just went down during your product launch. In front of your investors. With 18,000 active client accounts frozen. There's nothing temporary about the damage this is doing to your credibility." The words hit like physical blows. Harrison felt his career, 23 years of 80-hour weeks, of missing his daughter's recitals and his son's baseball games, of sacrificing everything at the altar of success, crumbling like a sandcastle before the tide. "Marcus." Harrison's voice cracked with desperation. "Tell me you have something." The CTO looked up from a cluster of programmers hunched over a central workstation like surgeons around an operating table. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. "The source code." "Harrison, someone or something has corrupted the core architecture. Every patch we try to apply gets rejected. It's like the system has developed an autoimmune disease and is attacking our solutions." "What about the contingency protocols?" "Locked out. All of them." "The emergency reboot sequence?" "Tried it. 3 times. The system won't accept the override commands." Harrison felt the room tilt slightly. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not during the launch that was supposed to secure Vertex's position as the dominant player in financial technology. Not in front of investors who trusted him with hundreds of millions of dollars. A junior developer named Patterson spoke up, his voice small and terrified. Should we call external contractors? Maybe someone from Microsoft or Oracle? And admit to the entire tech industry that we can't fix our own platform? Marcus snapped. We'd be finished. Completely finished. The IT team looked like survivors of a shipwreck clinging to debris. 27 of the brightest minds in software engineering, graduates of MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, reduced to helpless spectators as their creations self-destructed. Some were frantically typing commands that went nowhere. Others had given up entirely, staring at their screens with the blank expressions of trauma victims. Harrison's phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket. He pulled it out to see a barrage of messages. Client services, phone lines are overwhelmed. Clients threatening to sue. Legal, we need to discuss liability exposure immediately. Peer, Bloomberg is already running the story. Stock price down 23% in pre-market. His hands trembled as he read. 23%. In minutes. Years of building trust, gone. Harrison. Margaret Chen's voice cut through the noise again, and this time there was something almost gentle in it. The gentleness of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. I think we need to discuss next steps. Privately. Perhaps we should reconvene after you've stabilized the situation. It was a polite execution. Harrison knew that the moment this video call ended, those investors would be in emergency meetings with their legal teams, discussing how to minimize losses and extract themselves from Vertex before the ship went fully underwater. Margaret, please, just give us 1 hour, Harrison. Fix this in 1 hour, or we're moving to protect our investment through other means. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was more deafening than the alarms. 200 employees stood or sat in various states of shock, all eyes turning toward Harrison. He felt their judgment, their fear, their anger. These people had families, mortgages, dreams. And he was failing them. Marcus approached, his face a mask of exhausted defeat. Harrison, I don't know what else to try. We've run every diagnostic, every recovery protocol. Whatever this is, it's beyond anything we've encountered. It's like someone rewrote the fundamental language the system operates on, and now it won't speak to us anymore. Harrison looked past Marcus to the sea of red screens, each one an accusation. His reflection stared back at him from the dark glass walls. A man who suddenly looked much older than 48, the lines around his eyes cut deep with stress and sleepless nights. How long would it take to rebuild from scratch? He asked quietly. 6 months. Maybe 8. And we'd lose every client. Every single one. Harrison closed his eyes. When he opened them, he noticed something odd. At the far end of the office, near the service elevator that the cleaning crew used, stood a small figure. A boy, no more than 12 or 13, with a backpack slung over one shoulder and curious eyes that seemed to be taking in the chaos with unusual calm. For just a moment, Harrison felt a flash of irritation. What was a child doing here? Today of all days? He had no idea that his entire world was about to change. Alex Benson had been in this building 100 times, but never during business hours. Usually, he came with his father around 7 p.m. after the office workers had gone home and the cleaners inherited the kingdom of cubicles and conference rooms. He knew the layout better than most employees, which bathrooms had the good soap, which vending machines gave extra chips if you hit them just right, which offices had the comfortable chairs perfect for doing homework while his dad worked. But today was different. Early dismissal from school due to a broken heating system. His mom was working a double shift at the hospital. So his father, Bernard Benson, had made an unusual decision. Bring Alex to work for a few hours until they could go home together. Stay in the break room on the service level, his father had instructed, handing him a sandwich and his tablet. Don't bother anyone. The business folks get real touchy about kids being around during work hours. Alex had intended to obey. He really had. But then he'd heard the commotion through the ventilation system, shouts, running footsteps, the electronic shriek of alarms. Curiosity was Alex's defining trait, the thing his teachers both praised and complained about in equal measure. His mind was a sponge that absorbed information indiscriminately: quantum physics from YouTube, coding tutorials from free online courses, network architecture from library books that he'd check out 3 at a time. So when the noise started, Alex couldn't help himself. He took the service elevator up, emerging into a scene that looked like something from a disaster movie. The open office was a battlefield of panic. Men and women in expensive clothes rushed between desks. Computer screens glowed angry red. Someone was crying. Another person was yelling into a phone about catastrophic failure. Alex's eyes widened as he took it all in, his mind automatically analyzing the situation with the systematic approach he applied to everything. He walked slowly into the space, invisible in the way that children often are when adults are consumed by crisis. His sneakers, scuffed Converse that his mom had bought from the Goodwill, made soft squeaking sounds on the polished floor, but no one noticed. He was a ghost drifting through their nightmare. Alex approached one of the abandoned workstations and looked at the screen. Error code 0x000000F4. System kernel failure. But not just any failure. The cascade pattern on the screen suggested something more complex. His fingers itched to touch the keyboard, but he held back, knowing that interfering with other people's computers was a rule his father had made absolutely clear. "Hey, kid." Alex turned to see a woman in a crisp white blouse marching toward him, her face flushed with stress and irritation. Sarah Chin, though Alex didn't know her name yet, looked at him like he was a stray dog that had wandered into a wedding. "You can't be here," she said, not unkindly but firmly. "This is a workplace. Where are your parents?" "My dad works here," Alex replied quietly. "He's a janitor. I'm just..." "Well, this isn't a good time for kids to be wandering around. Why don't you go back downstairs, or better yet, go outside and play? We're dealing with a serious emergency." Play. The word stung, though Alex tried not to show it. It was the word adults always used when they wanted to dismiss him. Go play. Go be a kid. As if his age automatically made him irrelevant to the serious business of adults. "I was just looking," Alex started. "I'm sure you were, honey, but these computers are very expensive and very broken right now, and we need professionals to fix them, okay?" Sarah's tone had shifted to the overly sweet register adults used when talking to small children. "Run along now." Alex nodded and stepped back, but he didn't leave. Instead, he drifted to the periphery of the chaos, watching. Always watching. His mind churned through what he was seeing, the patterns of panic, the technical language being thrown around, the fundamental misunderstanding he could see in how they were approaching the problem. Near the central server room, he could see the CO, though he didn't know that's what Harrison was, staring at screens with the expression of a man watching his world end. The man looked tired. Human in a way that made Alex's heart clench with unexpected sympathy. Marcus Webb stormed past, nearly colliding with Alex in his haste. "Why is there a kid here?" he muttered to no one in particular, then louder, "Can someone get this child out of the operations area? We have enough problems." 2 security guards appeared, younger guys who Alex had seen during his evening visits. They recognized him, looked uncertain. "That's Benson's kid," one muttered to the other. "I don't care whose kid he is," Marcus snapped. "This is a crisis situation. He shouldn't be here." Alex felt small. Invisible. Dismissed. It was a familiar feeling, the sensation of having thoughts and ideas that no one wanted to hear because they came from someone who was still 12, still in school, still supposed to be playing instead of thinking. But as the security guards gently tried to guide him toward the elevator, Alex's eyes caught something on the nearest monitor. A flash of code in the error log that made his breath catch. He recognized it, or rather, he recognized the signature of what it was. Not a virus. Not a hack. But a recursive loop conflict in the memory allocation protocol, complicated by what looked like a deprecated legacy integration that had become incompatible with a recent update. It was fixable. Easily fixable if someone knew where to look. Alex pulled away from the security guards and walked toward the main console where the IT team had gathered. His heart hammered in his chest, but his mind was clear. He'd learned to trust his analytical instincts, even when adults dismissed them. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely audible over the chaos. No one heard him. Excuse me, he tried again, slightly louder. A programmer glanced down, irritated. Kid, seriously, you need to leave. This is grown-up work. I think I know what's wrong with your system, Alex said. The programmer blinked. Then laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound that wasn't entirely kind. Oh, you do? Did you learn that in 5th grade computer class? 6th grade, Alex corrected automatically. And no, I learned it from MIT OpenCourseWare and some textbooks on network architecture. Your system isn't crashed. It's in a recursive loop caused by a memory allocation conflict. You probably updated your core platform recently, but you have legacy integration protocols that are using an old reference language that's incompatible with the new architecture. The system keeps trying to reconcile them and fails, then tries again, creating an infinite loop that's eating all your processing power. Silence fell around him like snow. The programmer's mouth hung open. Sarah Chin, who'd overheard from a few feet away, turned with an expression of complete disbelief. That's... She started, then stopped, her mind clearly racing. That's actually it. How old are you? 12, Alex said. But I don't think that's relevant to whether I'm right or wrong about your system architecture. Harrison Mercer had been watching the exchange from across the room. Something about the boy's quiet confidence, the precise technical language coming from someone barely tall enough to see over the desk, cut through his despair like a knife through fog. He walked over, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. Son, Harrison said, and his voice carried the weight of a man with nothing left to lose. What exactly are you suggesting? Alex turned to face the CEO, noting the expensive suit, the tired eyes, the desperate hope barely concealed behind professional skepticism. I'm suggesting I can fix it, Alex said simply. If you'll let me try. The absurdity of the moment hung in the air like a held breath. A 12-year-old boy in a faded school uniform, standing before the CEO of a $2 billion company, claiming he could solve a problem that had defeated 27 MIT-educated engineers. Marcus Webb let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. Harrison, we don't have time for this. The kid probably saw something on a YouTube video and thinks. What do we have to lose? Harrison interrupted, surprising himself. His voice was hoarse, wrung out by stress. Margaret Chin gave us 1 hour. We've burned through 40 minutes and got nowhere. If he wants to try something, what's the harm? The harm is wasting precious time. Time doing what? Everything we've tried has failed. Harrison looked down at Alex, studying the boy's face. There was no arrogance there, no childish bravado. Just calm certainty, the kind that came from knowledge rather than ego. You really think you can fix this? I won't know until I look at the source architecture, Alex replied. But yes, I think so. Harrison made a decision that later he would recognize as the pivot point of his entire career. Give him access. The IT team erupted in protests, but Harrison raised his hand. Give. That's not a request. Sarah Chin looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Harrison's tone made her comply. She pulled up a chair. Alex had to sit on the edge to reach the keyboard properly, and logged into her administrative account, granting access to the system's core architecture. Alex's fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment. Around him, the entire office had gone silent, the panic temporarily suspended by sheer incredulity. 200 people watching a 12-year-old boy about to touch a multi-million-dollar system that was already catastrophically broken. Then Alex began to type. His fingers moved across the keys with surprising speed, not the hunt and peck of a child but the fluid confidence of someone who'd spent thousands of hours coding. Lines of command text appeared on the screen, complex strings that made several of the watching programmers lean in closer. He's accessing the kernel-level protocols, someone whispered. Jesus, he's bypassing the security layers like he built them himself, another murmured. Alex's eyes scanned the code flowing past, his mind processing information at a rate that seemed impossible for someone his age. Years of self-directed learning had given him an unusual advantage. He'd learned programming without the assumptions and habits that formal education sometimes instilled. He saw systems the way they actually were, not the way textbooks said they should be. "There," he said quietly, pointing at a section of code. "That's your legacy integration protocol. It's calling a reference that doesn't exist in your updated framework. Every 17 milliseconds, the system tries to execute this command, fails, and tries again. The processing power required is doubling exponentially each cycle." Marcus Webb pushed his glasses up his nose, squinting at the screen. "But that protocol was supposed to be deprecated 3 updates ago. Why is it still active?" "Someone probably left a backdoor reference for compatibility purposes and forgot to remove it," Alex said, his fingers still moving. "It happens a lot when development teams grow. Different programmers, different styles, things get lost in the transitions." He was right. Saracen pulled up the development logs and found the entry, a notation from 2 years ago, a safety measure that had been meant to be temporary but had slipped through every subsequent code review. "Okay, so you found the problem," Harrison said, hardly daring to hope. "Can you fix it?" "Fixing it is the easy part," Alex replied. "The harder part is preventing cascade failures when I remove the conflict. The system has been in this loop for almost an hour now. There's going to be corrupted data in the cache, orphan processes, memory allocation issues. If I just delete the problematic protocol, the system might reboot but crash again within minutes." He spoke while typing, his young voice at odds with the technical sophistication of his words. Around him, the engineers exchanged glances that ranged from skepticism to growing amazement. Alex opened multiple command windows, his approach methodical and precise. First, he isolated the recursive loop, creating a containment protocol that would prevent it from spreading while he worked. Then he began carefully unwinding the corrupted processes, like a surgeon removing a tumor while preserving healthy tissue. "He's writing custom scripts on the fly," Patterson whispered, his earlier dismissiveness replaced with awe. "Those aren't standard protocols. He's improvising solutions." Minutes passed. The only sound was Alex's typing and the soft hum of the cooling fans. Harrison found himself holding his breath, afraid that any movement might break whatever spell was allowing this impossible thing to happen. On Alex's main screen, the sea of red error messages began to change. One by one, like lights coming on in a darkened building, system modules began reporting normal status. Green text appeared, memory allocation stabilized. Then, legacy protocol safely deprecated. Then, cache purge complete. "Oh my God," Saracen breathed. "He's actually doing it." The change rippled through the office like a wave. Across 200 workstations, red screens began flickering, transitioning through amber warnings before finally settling into the steady green of normal operations. The alarm sounds that had been screaming for nearly an hour went silent. The soft, familiar hum of the servers returned, a heartbeat restored. Alex typed a final command sequence, his small hands steady on the keys. "Running full system diagnostic now. This will verify that all modules are properly integrated and there are no residual conflicts." Progress bars appeared across multiple screens. 45%, 67%, 88%. Harrison's phone buzzed. He looked down to see a message from client services. "Accounts are coming back online. Clients reporting normal access." Another message from their lead product manager. "All platform functions restored. Running at 100% capacity." The diagnostic reached 100%. A simple message appeared on Alex's screen in bold green letters. "System status, operational. All modules functioning normally. No errors detected." For a moment, absolute silence filled the office. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Within seconds, the entire floor erupted in applause and cheers. Engineers high-fived. Junior analysts hugged. Someone popped open a bottle of champagne that had been waiting for the product launch celebration. Harrison stood frozen, staring at the 12-year-old boy who just saved his company. Alex had stood up from the chair, looking slightly overwhelmed by the sudden attention, his hands clasped in front of him in an almost defensive posture. Marcus Webb approached slowly, his face cycling through emotions too complex to name. "How?" He started, then stopped. "How did you learn to do that?" YouTube, mostly, Alex said with a small shrug. And MIT OpenCourseWare. And some books. I like how systems work. How they fit together. When they break, it's like a puzzle. YouTube, Marcus repeated faintly. MIT OpenCourseWare. Harrison's mind was racing through the implications of what had just happened. This child, the son of their janitor, had accomplished in 15 minutes what their entire IT department couldn't do in an hour. Not through luck. Not through accident. Through genuine skill and understanding. A laugh bubbled up from Harrison's chest, surprising him. It started small and grew, not from mockery but from the sheer absurd relief of it all. I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. He walked up to Alex, studying the boy with new eyes. What's your name, son? Alex Benson, sir. Benson? Harrison's eyes widened slightly. Bernard Benson's kid? Our night custodian. Alex nodded. Harrison ran his hand through his hair, which had come loose from its usual perfect styling during the crisis. His mind was already moving forward, calculating possibilities. Alex, let me ask you something. That solution you just implemented, did you memorize it from somewhere, or did you create it yourself? Created it, Alex said. Each system is unique. You can learn principles and patterns, but solutions have to be custom-built for specific problems. Harrison turned to Marcus. In your professional opinion, what's the sophistication level of what we just witnessed? Marcus looked uncomfortable, the way people do when confronting something that challenges their fundamental assumptions. Senior level, he admitted quietly. Maybe higher. The diagnostic approach he used, the way he isolated variables, the custom scripting. I have engineers with master's degrees who couldn't have done what he just did. Not that quickly, not that cleanly. Harrison turned back to Alex, and his expression shifted into something playful, though his eyes held a sharp, calculating intelligence. Tell you what, Alex. I'm a betting man. So here's my bet. If you can write, and I mean actually write, debug, and execute, a program in just one programming language right now, proving you didn't just get lucky with this fix, I'll hire you. As a consultant. $50,000 a month. The number hit the room like a bomb. $50,000. $600,000 annually. For a 12-year-old. Harrison, Sarah Chin interjected carefully, he's in 6th grade. And he just saved this company from complete financial collapse. Harrison shot back. Age doesn't matter. Talent does. He looked back at Alex, extending the challenge. Well, can you code in any language? Python? Java? C++? Alex's face, which had been carefully neutral through all of this, showed the first hint of a smile. It wasn't arrogant, more like the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd been underestimated his whole life and was finally getting a chance to prove himself. I can code in 12 languages, Alex said simply. Which one would you like to see? The conference room Harrison commandeered for this impromptu demonstration had glass walls, which meant the entire office could watch. And watch they did. Employees abandoned their newly restored workstations, clustering outside the transparent barriers like spectators at an aquarium, watching not fish but something far stranger, a 12-year-old about to prove or disprove the impossible. Harrison, Marcus, Sarah, and 3 senior engineers sat around the conference table. Alex stood at the head, a laptop positioned in front of him. His small frame and faded school uniform created a jarring contrast with the sleek corporate environment. 12 languages, Marcus said, still skeptical despite what he'd witnessed. Name them. Alex's voice was steady. Python, JavaScript, Java, C++, C#, Ruby, PHP, Swift, SQL, R, HTML/CSS, though those are technically markup rather than programming languages, and assembly. Patterson, the junior developer who'd earlier suggested calling external contractors, let out a low whistle. Assembly? You're 12 and you know assembly. It's not that hard once you understand how compilers translate high-level code into machine language, Alex replied. Assembly just skips the middle step. It's actually kind of elegant. Sarah Chin shook her head slowly. Most professional programmers avoid assembly because it's tedious and error-prone. You're telling me you learned it for fun? I wanted to understand how computers actually think, Alex said. Assembly shows you that. Harrison leaned forward, his fingers steepled. The crisis had passed, his company was saved, but now he was in a different mode, the mode of a businessman who just stumbled onto something potentially extraordinary. All right, Alex. Here's your challenge. Write me a program that solves a real business problem. Something practical that this company could actually use. What kind of problem? Alex asked. Harrison thought for a moment, then smiled. Our client onboarding process. Right now, when new clients sign up, they have to manually enter data into 4 different forms that all ask for similar information. It's redundant, it's annoying, and we lose about 15% of potential clients because they get frustrated and quit halfway through. Can you write something that would streamline that? What language? Alex asked. Your choice. Surprise me. Alex considered for a moment. Python for the back-end logic, JavaScript for the front-end interface. I'll create a dynamic form that populates subsequent fields based on initial inputs, validates data in real time, and uses API integration to verify information against your existing database structure to avoid redundancy. Marcus blinked. That's actually exactly the kind of solution we've been discussing implementing for months. Our development team has been working on specifications for. How long will you need? Harrison interrupted. Alex looked at the clock on the wall. Give me 30 minutes. The room erupted in murmurs. 30 minutes to build something that a professional team had been planning for months? It was absurd. It had to be impossible. But Harrison just nodded. 30 minutes. Starting now. Alex sat down, pulled the laptop close, and his fingers began their dance across the keyboard. The watchers outside the glass walls pressed closer. Word had spread through the building. The janitor's kid was coding a live demonstration. People on other floors heard about it and came up. Even the receptionist abandoned her post to watch. Inside the conference room, the executives and engineers sat in silence, watching Alex work. His face was a mask of concentration, his eyes moving rapidly between the screen and his hands. Every so often he'd pause, his lips moving silently as he thought through a logic sequence, then he'd resume typing with renewed purpose. Harrison found himself studying the boy's profile. What had created this? What combination of circumstances and innate talent had resulted in a 12-year-old janitor's son teaching himself skills that most people required years of formal education to acquire? Where does he go to school? Harrison asked quietly. Marcus pulled out his phone, accessing employee records. Bernard Benson's address puts him in Lincoln Middle School's district. He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew Lincoln Middle School's reputation. Underfunded, overcrowded, test scores consistently in the bottom quartile of the district. Not the kind of place where prodigies were typically discovered or nurtured. Does he have special programs there? Sir asked. Advanced placement, gifted and talented. Marcus scrolled through more information. Doesn't look like it. Actually, his grades are mixed. A's in math and science, but C's in English and social studies. Teacher's notes say he's distracted and doesn't apply himself. Distracted, Harrison repeated, a bitter laugh in his voice. They have a genius in their classroom and they think he's distracted. Patterson spoke up. I mean, to be fair, how would they know? If he's not showing this stuff in class. Why would he? Alex said, not looking up from his coding. School teaches you to memorize answers. This, he gestured at the screen, is about creating questions and solving them. They're completely different skills. The casual way he'd eavesdropped while coding, processing 2 streams of information simultaneously, sent another ripple of amazement through the watching engineers. 20 minutes passed. Alex's program began to take shape on the screen. The executives could see a clean, intuitive interface forming, input fields that appeared and disappeared based on user responses, real-time validation that flagged errors before they could be submitted, a progress bar showing completion status. He's using AJAX calls for the real-time validation, one engineer whispered to another. That's not beginner stuff. And look at his code structure. It's clean, commented, modular. He's writing production quality code. At the 28-minute mark, Alex stopped typing. He ran his hands through his messy hair, a gesture that made him look his age for the first time, and clicked a button. A browser window opened, displaying a professional-looking form interface. Alex turned the laptop around so everyone could see. This is the client onboarding form, he explained, slipping into a presentation mode that suggested he'd done this before, probably in his head for an audience of none. Instead of 4 separate forms, it's one adaptive form. Watch. He filled in a company name. Immediately, 3 fields below auto-populated with information pulled from public business registries: company address, incorporation date, industry classification. It's querying external APIs to verify and autofill information, Alex explained. That eliminates redundant questions and reduces user input time by about 60%. He continued filling out the form. When he entered an email address with a typo, the system immediately flagged it. Email format appears incorrect. Did you mean at gmail.com instead of @gmail.com? Real-time validation with intelligent correction suggestions, Alex said, reduces errors and user frustration. The form adapted as he progressed, showing or hiding questions based on previous answers. When he indicated the client was a corporation rather than an individual, an entire section about corporate structure appeared. When he specified the company was in healthcare, regulatory compliance questions materialized. The whole process took less than 3 minutes, a task that currently took clients an average of 20 minutes and multiple page loads. When Alex clicked Submit, a confirmation screen appeared with a clean summary of all entered information, along with a message: "Thank you for joining Vertex Technologies. Your account has been created and our team will contact you within 24 hours." In the back end, Alex switched views to show them. The data had been cleanly organized into their database structure, formatted correctly, tagged appropriately, ready for their sales team to access. The entire codebase is commented, Alex said, opening the source files. So your developers can understand, modify, and extend it. I used standard libraries and frameworks that you're already licensed for, so there's no additional costs. And I built in security protocols to prevent SQL injection and other common attack vectors. Silence. Profound, absolute silence. Then Marcus Webb did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He started to laugh. Not mockery, but the kind of laughter that comes when reality becomes so absurd that it breaks through into humor. "This is insane," Marcus said, wiping his eyes. "This is absolutely insane. We have a development team of 12 people who've been working on this problem for 2 months. 2 months. This kid just solved it in less than 30 minutes, and his solution is probably better than what we would have eventually built." Harrison stood up slowly, walking around the table to where Alex sat. He looked at the screen, then at the boy, then back at the screen. "How?" Harrison said, and his voice cracked slightly with emotion. "How is this possible? How did you learn all this? Who taught you?" Alex seemed to struggle with how to answer. "Nobody taught me," he finally said. "I taught myself. When my dad works nights, I'd come here sometimes, use the computers in the break room. I started with basic tutorials, then more advanced ones. Then I'd find problems, like in video games or websites that didn't work right, and I'd try to figure out how to fix them. It's just practice. Lots and lots of practice." "Your parents know you can do this?" Sarah asked gently. Alex shrugged. "My mom knows I'm good with computers. My dad thinks I just play games. I've tried to explain it to them, but..." He trailed off, and for the first time, he looked like what he was, a kid trying to connect with adults who didn't quite understand him. Harrison made a decision. Actually, he'd already made it the moment those red screens turned green, but now he was ready to verbalize it. "Alex, I wasn't joking about the offer. I want to hire you. I know you're 12, I know you're in school, and I know this is unconventional. But talent like yours doesn't come along often. We can work around your schedule, after school, weekends, remote work. I'll work with your parents, make sure it's legal, make sure you're protected. But I want you as part of this company. What do you say?" Alex looked up at Harrison, and for the first time since this whole bizarre afternoon had started, his composure cracked. His eyes went wide, shiny with emotion he was trying to control. $50,000? He whispered. A month. That's the offer. But I'm 12 years old and more skilled than most of my engineers. Age is just a number, Alex. Ability is what matters. Alex bit his lip, thinking. I'd need to ask my parents. Of course, I'll talk to them myself. In fact, Harrison pulled out his phone. Is your father still in the building? 5 minutes later, Bernard Benson stepped off the service elevator, looking confused and worried. He'd been cleaning the 20th floor bathrooms when security had called, saying the CEO needed to see him immediately. In 20 years of janitorial work, that phrase had never preceded good news. Bernard was a large man, broad-shouldered from years of physical labor, wearing the gray uniform of the maintenance crew. His hands were rough and calloused. He saw Alex sitting in the conference room surrounded by executives and his heart dropped. What happened? Bernard asked, looking between his son and Harrison. Alex, what did you do? Mr. Benson, Harrison said, extending his hand. Nothing bad, I promise. In fact, your son just saved this company from a catastrophic system failure. He's extraordinary. Bernard shook the offered hand automatically, confusion deepening. I'm sorry, what? And so Harrison explained. Bernard's expression cycled through disbelief, shock, pride, and concern in rapid succession. When Harrison got to the part about the job offer, Bernard actually laughed. $50,000, he repeated. Sir, with all respect, I make $32,000 a year. You're telling me you want to pay my 12-year-old son more in a month than I make in a year and a half. I'm telling you that your son has a gift that's worth far more than that, Harrison replied. And I'd be a fool not to recognize it. Bernard looked at Alex, really looked at him, and seemed to see his son differently for the first time. You can really do all this computer stuff they're talking about? Alex nodded. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to. You thought I was just playing games. Bernard's face crumpled slightly. Jesus, Alex. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Harrison gave them space for a moment, then continued. Mr. Benson, I understand this is a lot to process. I want to propose something. Let Alex work with us part-time, very part. A few hours a week, no impact on his schooling. We'll set up an education trust for him, make sure everything is legally sound, work with you both on boundaries and protections. This isn't about exploiting a child. This is about nurturing a gift. Bernard looked at his son, seeing the hope in Alex's eyes. What do you want, Alex? Really want? I want to learn more, Alex said simply. I want to solve bigger problems. I want to matter. You already matter, son. I know that. But I want to matter to more than just us. 3 weeks later, the transformation was complete. The conference room that had served as the site of Alex's demonstration had been converted into what the employees had started calling the lab, a hybrid workspace designed around Alex's unique position. Half of it was set up like a traditional developer's environment, high-end workstations, multiple monitors, whiteboards covered in code diagrams. The other half looked like a study space, with a comfortable chair, room for homework, shelves for textbooks. Alex's official title was Junior Technology Consultant, and his contract, carefully vetted by both employment lawyers and child labor attorneys, stipulated that he could work no more than 10 hours per week during the school year, with all work to be completed between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on weekdays and flexible hours on weekends. His compensation had been adjusted to $15,000 monthly to account for the reduced hours, paid into a trust fund that he couldn't access until age 18, with a separate allowance for immediate expenses that his parents controlled. It had made the news, of course. 12-year-old Prodigy hired by tech company ran in the local paper. The tech blogs picked it up. Vertex Technologies bets big on tween developer. Some of the coverage was positive, celebrating the recognition of unconventional talent. Some was critical, questioning the ethics of putting a child in a corporate environment. But inside Vertex Technologies, the transformation was undeniable. Alex sat in the lab on a Thursday afternoon, working through a problem that the development team had been stuck on for days. Around him were 3 senior engineers, Marcus, Sarah, and a new hire named David Chin who'd specifically asked to work with the kid genius. What if we approached it from a different angle? Alex suggested, sketching on the whiteboard. His handwriting was messy, still childlike, but the logic diagrams were sophisticated. Instead of trying to optimize the query speed, what if we restructured the database schema to reduce the number of queries needed? David Chin, who had a PhD in computer science from Berkeley, studied the diagram. That's actually brilliant. It would require rebuilding a significant portion of the backend, but the performance gains would be substantial. Plus, Alex added, it would make the system more scalable. If you're planning to grow your client base like Mr. Mercer wants, the current architecture would start to bottleneck around 50,000 active users. This approach could handle 500,000. Sarah Chin shook her head with a smile. 3 weeks ago, he was telling us about his structure. Now we're implementing his recommendations in our core platform. This is surreal. The door opened and Harrison walked in, carrying coffee for the adults and a hot chocolate for Alex. It had become his routine to check in during Alex's work sessions, partly to monitor the collaboration, partly because he found it energizing to watch. How's the optimization project coming? Harrison asked. Alex just revolutionized our database architecture, Marcus replied. Again. It's not revolutionary, Alex protested, the way he always did when people praised his work. It's just applying horizontal scaling principles with some modifications for your specific data structure. Just, Harrison repeated with a laugh. He'd learned that Alex had a habit of downplaying his contributions, a humility that seemed built into his personality. How's school going? Alex's face shifted slightly, the excitement dimming. It's fine. That doesn't sound fine. Alex shrugged, a gesture Harrison had learned meant he was uncomfortable talking about something. But Sarah, who developed a particular rapport with the boy, pressed gently. Having trouble with classmates? She asked. They think I'm showing off now, Alex admitted quietly. Since the news articles. They didn't like me much before, but now some of them call me names. Say I think I'm better than everyone. Do you? Harrison asked, genuinely curious. No. Alex looked horrified at the suggestion. I like different things than they do. That doesn't make me better or worse. Just different. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I was the weird kid in school too. Spent lunch periods in the computer lab while everyone else played sports. It gets better, Alex. When you get older, being smart stops being something people mock you for and starts being something they respect. When I get older, Alex echoed, then added with a slight smile, meanwhile, I get paid more than most adults to do what I love. I think I can survive middle school. The adults laughed, and the session continued. But Harrison made a mental note to talk to Bernard about Alex's social struggles. Genius might be recognized and rewarded in the corporate world, but in the social ecosystem of middle school, it was still a liability. That evening, after Alex had gone home with his father, Harrison called an executive meeting. The senior leadership team gathered in the main conference room, the same room where, just weeks ago, they'd watched their company nearly collapse. I want to talk about the Alex Benson effect, Harrison began. Since he started working with us, what changes have we seen? The responses came quickly. Development speed has increased by 35%, Marcus reported. Having Alex review our code and suggest optimizations has eliminated bottlenecks we didn't even know existed. Client onboarding completion rate is up 42% since we implemented his adaptive form system, Sarah added. Client satisfaction scores have jumped significantly. The CFO spoke up. Our stock price has recovered everything we lost during the system crash, plus gained another 8%. Investors are excited about our innovative approach to talent acquisition. And the PR has been overwhelmingly positive, the marketing director noted. We're being positioned as a company that values merit over credentials, potential over pedigree. It's resonating with the market. Harrison nodded, absorbing it all. Here's what I'm thinking. Alex isn't an anomaly. He's an example of how much talent we miss because we're looking in the wrong places, using the wrong filters. How many other Alex Bensons are out there, Kids or adults who have skills but not degrees, abilities but not opportunities. He stood up, pacing. I want to launch a program. The Vertex Talent Initiative. We partner with schools in underserved communities, provide resources for kids interested in technology, offer mentorships, create pathways into the industry that don't require $200,000 degrees. And I want Alex to be the face of it, if he's willing, to show what's possible. That's ambitious, the CFO said carefully. Also expensive. Also right, Harrison countered. We got lucky. Alex walked through our door at exactly the moment we needed him. How many companies miss their Alex because he never gets through the door? How much potential is wasted because we insist on traditional credentials? Marcus spoke up, I'm in. Whatever you need from the technical side, you've got it. Working with Alex has reminded me why I got into this field in the first place. Not for the money or prestige, but because technology can be magic when you approach it with genuine curiosity and creativity. The vote was unanimous. The Vertex Talent Initiative would launch in 3 months. But first, there was a celebration to plan. The product launch that had been so catastrophically interrupted was rescheduled for a month after Alex's hire. This time, it went flawlessly. The platform performed perfectly, the investors were impressed, and Vertex Technologies secured an additional $50 million in funding. But the real story wasn't the product. It was the boy. Harrison had invited Alex to attend the launch event, not as an employee but as a guest of honor. The venue was the Grand Hall at the downtown Marriott, a space that could hold 500 people and was currently filled with investors, clients, tech journalists, and industry leaders. Alex wore a new suit that his mother had bought for the occasion, though he kept fidgeting with the tie. Bernard and his wife, Lisa Benson, sat in the front row, looking overwhelmed by the spectacle. Lisa was a nurse at County General, a woman who'd worked double shifts to help make ends meet, who'd never imagined seeing her son on a stage in front of hundreds of people. Harrison took the podium after the product demonstration. Before we conclude tonight, I want to share a story about what this company learned over the past month. About talent, potential, and the danger of assumptions. He told the story of the system crash, though he sanitized some of the panic for public consumption. He described the IT team's struggle, the ticking clock, the sense of impending disaster. And then, Harrison said, a 12-year-old boy walked into our office and asked if he could help. The audience laughed, thinking it was a setup for a joke. I'm completely serious, Harrison continued, and the laughter faded into confused silence. Alex Benson, the son of our night custodian, diagnosed and fixed a critical system failure that had defeated 27 professional engineers. He did it in 15 minutes using skills he taught himself from free online resources and library books. He gestured to Alex, who stood reluctantly at his mother's gentle prodding. The audience's attention swiveled to the boy in the too big suit. In the weeks since, Alex has become an integral part of our development team. His innovations have improved our platform's performance by over 40%. His code is cleaner than that of engineers with master's degrees. And he's done all this while maintaining his schoolwork and being a kid. Harrison paused, letting that sink in. Alex's story forced us to ask uncomfortable questions. How many talented people never get opportunities because they don't fit our preconceptions? How much potential do we waste because we confuse credentials with capability? How many problems go unsolved because we're looking for solutions from the right people instead of the right solutions? The speech continued. Harrison announced the Vertex Talent Initiative, pledging $10 million over 5 years to create opportunities for underrepresented talent. The audience applauded, but Harrison wasn't done. Alex, could you come up here, please? Alex looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. He walked to the stage, his steps small and uncertain. Harrison put a hand on his shoulder. I learned something important from this young man, Harrison said. I learned that brilliance doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't need the right credentials or the right background. It just needs a chance. Alex, on behalf of everyone at Vertex Technologies, thank you for taking a chance on us. The applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, a standing ovation for a 12-year-old who'd never sought attention, who just wanted to solve an interesting problem. In the front row, Lisa Benson was crying, her hand clasped in her husband's. Bernard watched his son on that stage and felt a complex mixture of pride and regret. Pride in who Alex was, regret that it had taken outsiders to see it. After the event, as people mingled, Alex found himself surrounded by strangers wanting to talk to him. Tech journalists asking about his techniques. College recruiters already trying to lock him down for programs a decade away. Other parents asking advice about how to nurture gifted children. It was overwhelming. Alex extracted himself and found a quiet corner, pulling out his phone to play a simple puzzle game. His way of decompressing. Quite a circus, huh? Alex looked up to see Margaret Chin, the lead investor who'd nearly pulled funding during the crisis. She sat down next to him without asking, her expression thoughtful. "I owe you an apology," she said. "When Harrison first told me what happened, I didn't believe him. I thought he was exaggerating or deluded. I demanded to see your work myself." "And?" Alex asked. "And I realized I was the one who'd been deluded. Deluded by my assumptions about what talent looks like, where it comes from, how it's credentialed." She smiled. "You cost me some sleep, Alex. Made me rethink a lot of my investment strategies. Made me wonder how many other opportunities I've missed because I was looking for the wrong signals. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. What you did, what you do, is important. Not just the technical work, but what it represents. You're proof that the system is broken, that we're leaving talent on the table. That's uncomfortable for people like me to confront, but it's necessary." She stood to leave, then paused. "Keep doing what you're doing, Alex. Keep being curious, keep solving problems, keep proving people wrong. The world needs more of that." 6 months later, the lab had evolved. What had started as a space for Alex had become a hub for the Vertex Talent Initiative. Every Saturday, 20 teenagers from underserved schools across the city gathered there for mentorship, training, and hands-on project work. Alex, despite being younger than all of them, had become an unofficial peer mentor, his lack of pretension making him surprisingly effective at explaining complex concepts. Marcus ran the program officially, but everyone knew Alex was its heart. On this particular Saturday, Alex was working with a 15-year-old girl named Shanice who was struggling with a JavaScript function. She'd grown up in the same neighborhood as Alex, attended a school with similar resource constraints, but had a gift for visual design that complemented her growing coding skills. "I don't get why this loop isn't working," Shanice said, frustrated. Alex looked at her code. "You're incrementing the wrong variable. See? You initialized I, but you're incrementing J. Easy fix." "Oh my God, I'm so stupid." "You're not stupid. You're learning. There's a difference." The words came from experience. Alex had spent months battling the imposter syndrome that came with being constantly praised and constantly doubted, often by the same people. He'd learned to separate mistakes from worth, to see errors as data rather than judgments. Shanice fixed her code, and when it worked, her face lit up with the particular joy that comes from solving a problem you've struggled with. Alex remembered that feeling from his early days teaching himself to code, hidden in the Vertex break room while his father cleaned offices. Harrison walked into the lab, a routine he'd maintained. He no longer came as the CEO checking on an unusual employee but as someone who'd found something meaningful beyond profit margins and stock prices. "How's the next generation looking?" Harrison asked. "They're brilliant," Alex replied, and he meant it. Each of these kids had the spark, the curiosity, the persistence, the creative problem-solving. They just needed what Alex had lucked into: opportunity, resources, and adults who believed in them. Harrison pulled Alex aside as the session wound down. "I wanted to talk to you about something. MIT reached out. They have a program for exceptional students, full scholarship, customized curriculum, early admission. They want you." Alex was quiet for a moment. "When would I start?" "You'd be 16. 4 years from now." "What about here? The initiative?" "It would continue. You've helped us build something sustainable, Alex. It doesn't depend on you being here every day." Alex looked around the lab at the teenagers packing up their laptops, at Shanice showing another student her fixed code with pride. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Norus. Later that evening, Alex and his father rode the bus home together, a routine they'd maintained despite Alex's now substantial trust fund. Bernard could have bought a car, could have moved the family to a better neighborhood, but he'd resisted the sudden wealth, wanting to preserve some normalcy for Alex. Mit who? Bernard said. That's a big deal. Yeah. You don't sound excited. Alex stared out the window at the passing city. I am. But, Dad, what if all this is just people seeing me as a novelty? The kid who got lucky once. Bernard was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the careful wisdom of someone who'd spent his life underestimated. Alex, I've cleaned offices for 20 years. You know what I've learned? Most people never get the chance to find out what they're capable of. They get stuck in boxes, job boxes, education boxes, expectation boxes. You broke out of those boxes. That's not luck. That's you. But what if I can't keep it up? What if the next problem I can't solve? Then you'll learn from it and solve the next one. That's what you've always done. The bus pulled up to their stop. As they walked the 3 blocks to their apartment, the same apartment they'd lived in for 10 years, Alex felt the weight of expectations and the lightness of possibilities warring inside him. Inside, Lisa had dinner waiting. The apartment was small, crowded with the detritus of normal family life. School papers on the fridge, his mother's nursing textbooks on the coffee table, the perpetual pile of laundry that never quite got folded. So, Lisa asked, tell me about MIT. They talked through dinner, discussing options, possibilities, timelines. It was normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Despite everything that had changed, this family dinner, shared conversation, parents who listened, remained constant. After dinner, Alex retreated to his room. It was tiny, barely large enough for a bed and desk, but he'd lined the walls with handwritten code snippets, mathematical formulas, and printouts of interesting algorithms. His laptop sat open on his desk, several programs running. He had homework, actual 6th grade homework about the Revolutionary War that felt absurdly simple compared to the system's architecture problems he solved at Vertex. But he did it anyway, carefully, honoring the commitment he'd made to his parents that his education wouldn't suffer. Then he opened his personal project, a program he'd been building in his spare time, an AI-assisted tutoring system designed for students in under-resourced schools. It would be free, accessible via any device, adaptive to individual learning styles. It was ambitious, probably beyond his current skills, but he was learning as he built. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, great session today. Shanice is really coming along. You're a good teacher, Alex. Then another, from Sarah, saw your database optimization in production today. Shaved 200 milliseconds off query times. Your magic kit. And one more, from Harrison, no pressure on MIT. Whatever you choose, we're proud of you. Alex looked at those messages, then at his screen, then around his small room with its handwritten code on the walls. He thought about the journey, from the kid nobody noticed to the prodigy everyone watched, from teaching himself in empty offices to teaching others in state-of-the-art facilities. But mostly, he thought about the system crash 6 months ago, about the moment when he'd chosen to walk into that chaos instead of staying invisible. About taking a risk even when every signal said a 12-year-old shouldn't be in that space, shouldn't offer to help, shouldn't believe he had something to contribute. The world was full of problems. Systems that didn't work, inefficiencies that frustrated people, challenges that seemed insurmountable. And somewhere, in underfunded schools, in overlooked communities, in spaces where no one thought to look, were the people capable of solving them. They just needed someone to see them, to believe them, to give them a chance. Alex smiled and returned to his code, his fingers finding their rhythm on the keyboard, building something new, something useful, something that mattered. In the quiet of his small room, the only sound was the soft clicking of keys, the sound of potential becoming reality, one line of code at a time. The Vertex Talent Initiative had expanded to 17 cities. 243 students had gone through the program. 71 had been hired by tech companies. 12 had started their own ventures. Shanice had just sold her design software startup for $8 million. Alex Benson, now 15, split his time between Vertex Technologies, where he'd been promoted to senior technology consultant, and his own nonprofit teaching coding to elementary school students. He'd been featured in Time magazine's Most Influential Teens issue. MIT still wanted him, but so did Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and Caltech. He'd grown taller, his voice had deepened, but his eyes still held that same curious intensity. He'd learned to navigate the attention, to separate the noise from what mattered. He'd made friends, other kids who coded, who understood the particular loneliness of being different. But sometimes, late at night, he'd still ride the bus with his father, who still cleaned offices at Vertex Technologies. Not because he needed to anymore, but because Bernard Benson had spent 20 years building dignity from that work, and he wasn't ready to give it up. And every time they rode together, Bernard would ask, "You happy, son?" And Alex, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the problems he'd solved and the ones still waiting, would smile and say, "Yeah, Dad, I really am." Because happiness wasn't about being the youngest, or the smartest, or the most celebrated. It was about knowing that when the world told you that you didn't belong, that you were too young, too different, too whatever, you'd had the courage to prove them wrong. And in doing so, you'd opened doors for everyone who'd come after. That was legacy. That was impact. That was worth every uncomfortable moment, every skeptical glance, every challenge. The janitor's kid who'd walked into chaos and walked out a hero had learned the most important lesson of all. Talent doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't need the right background, the right credentials, the right age. It just needs a chance. And when given that chance, it can change everything.